Views and do not reflect the views of any organisation or entity that the participants may be involved with. So let's get started. Well, welcome to our first episode of Who Gives a Vote for 2026. Let's start with you, Carly. How was your Christmas break?
I had a great Christmas break. It went a lot faster than I was hoping, but it was great.
And you're looking forward to today's topics?
I am. They're a bit bland, but you know.
Bland? I couldn't say that to Dave, but he's like busting his gut to at least talk.
They're not bland at all. Like if you could have picked three big topics to put together, these are three pretty big ones.
Yep. And David, obviously, which if you were to choose, we've got three topics here. We're talking about Daniel's Law, we're talking about puberty blockers, and we're talking about a Royal Commission and terrorism. Which ones, if you had to pick one to talk about today, which would it be and why?
Well, if you read my stuff on Facebook, you'll probably see that.
Which I do.
A huge amount of it relates to the Israel-Palestine issue, and so I guess the Royal Commission in terms of anti-Semitism is an area that I've spent a fair bit of time in. In fact, I wrote a 8 or 9 page submission on it to an inquiry. I don't know whether Virginia Bell's going to want a copy. The other two, I'm aware of them, but haven't really done a lot of research into them. But that won't stop me expressing strongly held opinions. For sure.
And George Seymour, welcome again. And you had a great 2025, end of 2025.
Yeah, we've had a very quintessential Hervey Bay Christmas, the Scarness ambulance wheel, lights at the Urangan Botanic Gardens, the tree out front of the gallery. So yeah, been a very relaxing time.
And ready to get back into things for 2026?
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, so we as I said before, we're talking about three issues, and they are Daniel's Law, which has just come into effect recently, and there's been some, movements in relation to people accessing that data on the Daniel's Law website. And then we're talking about puberty blockers, which is there's been a block from the state government to stop that process. So that's something that we want to look at as well. And then the Royal Commission and the response to the Bondi terror attacks is the third thing we're going to talk about. So let's get started. The first one is Daniel's Law. Who wants to lead off on this? Like, what's George? What's your view on, or give us a bit of background on what Daniel Law stands for?
Yeah, this is quite a big reform. I mean, it's gone the furthest of any in the country, way more than us. I mean, West Australia will be the closest, and this is in some way modelled upon it. This has, similarly to West Australia, 3 levels. The first level, you can go online and very quickly find out. Before you have to acknowledge a bunch of stuff that you're not going to be a vigilante, but very quickly find out anybody in Queensland who is basically the government's not aware, or the government has lost track of, or that is not completing to their orders. So that provides, and if you go online right now, there's nobody in that category. Then the next category, which will have massively boosted the number of people with Queensland government IDs, is locality search. So you can put in your locality where you live and nowhere else, and find, and then a little while later get pictures of anybody in that locality who is has been convicted of an offence which comes into the category we're talking about, mostly relating to child abuse. And then finally, you can put in somebody's name who you tell them who has direct contact with your children, and find out if they are an offender. It's going to be interesting how this plays out. Within hours, a couple of days, somebody had already been arrested and charged with breaching it in terms of publicating the details they had received. So that there are really strong, you can see there's big guardrails in terms of the offences for publishing what they give you.
Yeah, or making public, I think the words are. Anything you make public, you can have up to, it's 10 years in prison.
Yeah. And so I think there's going to be a lot of feedback in the coming weeks and months as people start to experience it and realize the limitations of it, because quite rightly, there are limitations on it. So, for example, the locality search, it is your locality. If you're thinking of moving somewhere, you can't do a search. So I think that people will start realizing the limitations and advocating for to be wider, but I think limitations, are quite necessary.
So let's go through that. It is a public child sex offender register called Daniel's Law under a different act, And it's where, as you said, it's broken into those three categories. For those who don't know, Daniel Morecambe was a young teenager from the Sunshine Coast who was tragically abducted and murdered in horrific circumstances. The perpetrator was later found after years of intense investigation work, and it was established that a person who was a sex offender was travelling through that location, and I guess this was a way of addressing that. So if we were to take that example, Daniel Morecambe, Sunshine Coast, and was it McGowan or Cohen? Was the offender's name McGowan? I can't remember, but the offender was driving through from northern Queensland, so he wouldn't make it.
It wouldn't have picked up on anything. No.
So that wouldn't.
In this case, no,
that
it
wouldn't
wouldn't have
fix
helped.
that.
No.
And I'm being respectful to the family. I mean, that was a terrible loss, and the advocacy that they've done, the Morecambes, has been incredible. But when you look at this, and I guess that's where, from people's perspectives, there's two schools of thought, I guess. Some people are saying it's ineffective, it doesn't go far enough, and other people are saying it's a breach of human rights, it's a breach of a safety. It's creating situations where potentially there could be vigilantism. What's your thoughts, David?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it develops. I can see some value in the third category, where if you want to find out whether somebody who's perhaps new in your family who's going to have contact with the children, if you want to find out whether they're on the register and so on, I can see that that's useful. The other two categories, I struggle to see just how effective they're going to be. If you, I mean, what does it matter whether I know who's missing on the register? You know, I mean, how can I help? I won't know anything more about his whereabouts, I don't imagine, than anybody else. The police will already have more information than I do, so I'm not sure how that assists anybody. And George says there's no one on the list yet, which is good. They've all been reporting or whatever. And the other category where you can search for your neighbourhood, I don't know what you do with that information without committing an offence. You know, you only get the photograph, so unless you recognise them, it doesn't help you identify them. You're not allowed to show the photograph around, so you can't you can't get Facebook to assist you to identify him.
Or her.
And I just struggle to see how that's going to be effective. I mean, I think it's important that they've got those safeguards. And did I see someone's already? You mentioned.
Yeah, someone was charged within 2 days,
yes.
2 or 3
I
days.
did try and look that up. I couldn't find an example of that. But where was that? Do you know?
I think he's got up here in the.
I see you've got the
Yeah.
police.
Well, this is a report on January 4th, and you got to remember, Christopher Foley said during the year that it would be available by the end of the year, and they made it available on the 31st of December. So they wanted to stick to that, so they got it out before the end of the year. So it became accessible on the 31st of December, and by January 4th, they were reporting on the first man who'd been arrested, a 47-year-old Lowood man. Lowood, is that like Ipswich?
Yeah.
Yeah. And with one count of identifying information without the written approval of the police commissioner. It became available on 11 a.m. on December 31st. So he'll be in court on the 21st of January in the Ipswich Magistrates Court.
And I think the importance of the guidelines, the protections in it, are highlighted by, I saw a headline float past me when I was looking for some news the other day, and I don't know the details, but there was something to the effect that some prisoners had been charged for murdering a pedophile, presumably in jail.
Yeah, in Maryborough.
Maryborough.
Was that in Maryborough?
Yeah.
Wasn't it? Yeah, I didn't have time to pursue the details, but I mean, these are the risks, aren't they, if you start telling the world that they can have access to information, identifying information in relation to a pedophile. That's the kind of reason why you need the
I mean, I'd say in jail that most of them would know.
Yeah, that's right.
So, Carly, you've gone through the process of registering. Can you talk us through that process and what the end? You went
Result
through
was?
option 2, so can you explain that process?
I went through option 2 and I have gone through a lot of option 3 as well to check it out.
So what's option 2?
Option 2 is your locality.
I think they call it tiers.
Yeah, there's different tiers, yeah.
Yep.
So it's your locality. So you put in your personal details, your address. In my case, I linked up my digital ID, which then allowed them to prove my address. But George has got some paperwork there with other ways that
the
people
actual
can
paper
do it.
form, you can do it, yeah.
Yeah, you can do it via paper and provide utility bills or something to prove that you live where you're requesting the information for. It really wasn't that complicated, that one. I got a thing, like a notification through saying my form had gone in, and then probably within the hour, I got the email from the police email through with the picture of the offender in my locality. And there's not really any other information other than all the disclaimers about.
Yeah, because there's no name, there's no whereabouts in the locality.
No,
nothing,
and they don't say
not even what
how
the
big
offence
the
was.
locality is.
Yeah, so you don't know if it's...
It could be Point Vernon, it could be
Hervey Bay.
It could be Hervey Bay, it could be Fraser Coast.
Yeah.
So locality is a bit deceptive, and it doesn't even go into detail in the legislation what the locality is either.
Yeah, a lot of it's at the discretion of the commissioner.
Yeah.
So delegate.
So I've actually got that picture. We're going to show it now.
Well, I'm going to prison, everyone.
No, we're not, because if you look at
Yeah, tell us what you would be doing if you published it right now.
Okay, so so under section 74AK, display, distribute, or publish identifying information. A person must not, without written approval of the police commissioner, display, distribute, or punish any identifying information, which is that picture that we're not showing.
That's all you've got, too.
I do not have his permission.
The commissioner's...
No.
Should we call him now?
Yeah.
He's actually in hospital at the moment, isn't
right.
he? He's got pneumonia, so he's struggling. I think the deputy commissioner's in charge at the moment, so he probably won't be able to give you that permission. But going back, that'd be 3 years imprisonment, which would equate to a $300 fine, probably, in all reality.
And likely more than the majority of sex offenders actually get themselves.
I think they're trying to use a big stick to... But then it does create an issue if you recognise somebody and you know that they're at a school or they're hanging around. What can you do with this information?
Yeah, well, I mean, presumably... I mean, it would get into interesting situations. Say, what if you knew they were at a soccer club and... I mean, I saw there was some sort of link that the police will act... Maybe it's the next year they'll act upon. Yes, the next year, where if they're aware of people with children, that they'll
To be clear, if you're working with children, you're required to have a blue card.
Yeah.
So if you'd be entitled to make a complaint in relation to the blue card that someone's either working with a blue card, without a blue card at an organisation, or that they've got a blue card when they... Well, clearly they shouldn't if they're on that register.
But that is like paid and volunteer. That's not if, someone's uncle's coming along to a soccer game and watching, or,
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess it brings it to that point is that you've shown me the picture because that's not public. That's just showing it. I've also...
And you live in my locality.
Yeah, that's correct. And if that's illegal, you didn't do that. I'm just doing that for dramatic effect. But I'm walking down the street tomorrow and I see somebody who looks like that. And I guess that's the doppelganger effect is how would you feel if you opened it up
and you look like you?
And they look like you.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that... Because the very issue that you raised, David, no name, no address, no context, just an image... that, and if you were to extend that to, and I don't want to come across as social profiling or being racist in what I'm saying here, but to some people, a slim 40-year-old Nigerian man would look similar to another Nigerian man to many people. So when for somebody, they would make those connections where, obviously. We're more used to the differences in our own people that look like us, I suppose.
I don't know about that. I mix a lot of people up in movies. I spend my life saying to Lincoln, "Is that the same guy as before? Is that the same guy as before?" So.
Yeah, but I guess when there's similar, when there's a lot of similar features, I suppose.
Yeah.
It becomes very problematic, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And to get back to the question of, what do you do with the information? Let's assume that you recognised him or her. Well, no point telling the police because they know they're the ones who've given you the information. You can't really even go and tell the school without getting the commissioner's consent and so on.
So-
I guess it's about the parent. It's all about parents having more information. So
What if he lived like 3 doors down and you've got little kids and your neighbours have got little kids?
yeah,
You might
if you
mention it.
found out it was your next door neighbour, that would. I'm not sure you would do anything, but your
No.
mindset would be quite different in
Yeah,
terms of
you'd be-
if you're asking them to look after your child, if you got to go down somewhere for 10 minutes or
If
something.
your kids play basketball in the park
Yeah.
across the road.
Yeah, I suppose there are those possibilities.
Like,
I mean-
I visit. I think about people I visited recently with my young son. As people cross the road, and I leave them with them. When I go back to my house, like you do. Sometimes leave your children with people, with neighbors for short periods of time.
Yeah, well, moving on to that, how does that, does this change in legislation, does Daniel's Law, does a sex register provide any sense of safety to the community?
It can never provide full sense of safety, and as you gave the example of what actually happened to the young Daniel Morecombe, I don't know anything that could actually have prevented that. And certainly no register could have. But I think there would be, if you look back over time, over a few decades, I think you would see different examples. People talk about, beware of strangers. It's usually not strangers.
No.
It's actually usually people in this tier
your
3.
circle.
Yeah, it's not actually strangers that are the danger in so many cases. It's
Yeah.
people that would be under tier 3 that people might have an icky feeling about.
Yeah.
So I think it would benefit. And if you looked at previous cases, admitted in Daniel Morecombe's case, I don't think any register could, but there would be a lot of offences over the years where this register could have played a role.
Yeah. Far more effective strategies are having honest conversations with your children about what a predator, what happens in the world, and being honest with them to say, if there's an issue, let's have a conversation. You're never wrong if you find yourself in that situation, because often they are. It's also trusting your instincts.
Trusting your gut, that icky feeling.
But also, and I think in Daniel Morecombe's case, if he made the decision, or the parents, like my kids never slept over someone's house, ever. I just never allowed it because of my own understanding of who the perpetrators of these types of offences were. Never slept over anyone's house. I had a small number of people that I trusted, and I was very open with people. I don't trust. It's not that I don't trust you, but it's not my job to trust you. I've got to look after my kids.
Yeah, being a police officer would do that.
I think you're probably the third police officer I've known, or
Yeah.
previous police officer I've known has had that same stance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when kids would come over our house, there was always a plan. Who are they coming with? Who are
Yeah.
they? I don't want to be left alone with them. I don't want to create a situation that enables that type of, I trust you. Well, you shouldn't, not just because a parent should be aware of and be mindful of. And again, young 13, 12-year-olds, 11-year-olds, they shouldn't be going out in public by themselves. They should be going out in partners, whether it be with a brother, a sister, a friend, and they should have a safety plan. What do you do if someone approaches you? Walk across the other road. Look for a safe person. Call. I used to say to my kids, if you're out in public and you start scream, and at night time, scream fire, because research shows that people race out of a house to look what's going on when you say fire. If you're at home by yourself, I used to say to my kids, call out, Dad, come downstairs.
Yeah.
Even if you're not home, because it creates uncertainty with it. So we'd map out all these different plans, so I think educating your children, having a good conversation is, to me, far more effective than this register would ever be.
I think conversations around grooming techniques and things as well is important, given that it's more likely to be a family or in your circle than it is to be a stranger.
Yeah. Where is good touch? Where is bad touch? Where is a safe space? Your bedroom belongs to you. No one's allowed in there. You don't go in any. So those sorts of conversations.
It'd be interesting to see if there's you know, maybe after 3 years there ought to be some examination of it. I mean, I you know, I've got an open mind as to whether it'll be of any real value, but that's something that should be assessed by people who know what they're doing. One of the problems with this sort of stuff is, especially in politics, is that people want to see something done about these major issues, and almost anything that looks like it might vaguely be moving in the direction of doing something is popular. And I suspect politicians, governments tend to do that without really the serious analysis that's needed as to whether it's going to achieve anything.
I'm not sure I don't know if anyone's read it. I haven't, certainly, about the WA system, because that's been in for about 10 years. I don't know if that's been effective or anything.
Well, I mean, the Australian Institute of Criminology did a comprehensive review on the registers in Australia and also overseas, and they said while results show that public sex offender registers might have a small general deterrent effect on first-time offenders, they do not reduce recidivism. Further, despite having some strong public support, they appear to have little effect on levels of fear in the community. So I guess, Carly, what's your thoughts? Is this a case of too far for some and not enough for others?
Well, before when you said that there's kind of two schools of thought, I, in my head, think that there's probably three, and the third one is that it's a false sense of security for certain people who may, I guess, not have as much wider knowledge on protecting their children or those kind of people within our community, that it might be a false sense of security and maybe they'll not be as cautious.
Yeah. So I think let's go on to the offences relating to that as well, because before we tidy it up, we did talk about display, distribute, but also if you conduct any conduct which a person intends to intimidate, harass another person they believe to or suspect is an identified offender, or incite another person to do the same, they're guilty of an offence, and that's 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a remarkable situation, like at trial, say, if you had suspicions about some guy and you were going to confront him, and then you got this back and it confirmed it, then you might be totally restricted from confronting them.
Because you
Yeah.
felt, you felt they were a bit off.
Yeah.
beforehand.
So you had, but by suddenly receiving the information through tier 2, you're prevented from doing much.
No, because even if you suspect it, that they're an identified offender.
So if you never,
outside of Daniel's law.
if the register never existed.
Yeah, because it's not the register; it's the act. It's the new. It's the
Oh,
act.
so it's something completely new.
Yeah, it's not the. It's obviously not Daniel's. The bill is Daniel's law.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
The actual act was. I haven't written. It's not. Is it crime prevent?
Something
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
it's like
It's a-
Community Protection and Public Child Sex Offender Register.
No,
Act.
that's not. That's the amendment. So that's
an act to amend the Child Protection, Offender Reporting and Offender Prohibition Order.
Yeah. So
I've got
that
Community Protection and Public Child Sex Offender Register, Daniel's Law Act 2025.
which is an
Yeah.
act. So if you go in and check acts in force, that act is not in there.
I noticed that.
It's an amended act.
Yeah.
It's all those Section 70s are to relate specifically to the act that it's amending, which is the one you just read, and I've forgotten again already. So yeah, it's a little bit confusing. It's not.
So when you talk about like 74 AJ, intimidation or harassment of identified offenders, person must not by public act engage in conduct to intimidate or harass another person they believe or suspect is an unidentified. Because you would know by or suspect. So that's new.
Yeah, that's an amended piece of legislation, not in. Daniel's Law is not an act in its own right. It's a division within that act, which is at the front. You've read again? Yeah. So I'm sure I'm making sense somewhere. And I actually thought I'd written it down here, but I clearly didn't.
Well, it's, Child Protection.
Yeah,
Child Protection, Offender Reporting and Offender Prohibition Order Act of 2004.
that's the one.
It's a 20-year-old act.
And don't ask me again, I'll forget it. I've already forgotten it now. That's how complicated it is. All right, so anything else on this topic before we move on to puberty blockers.
Then I think there'll be amendments to it, quite a bit as they fix it around the edges.
Yeah. Like any of those things, they'll brush
Yeah.
things up as they go along, but it can go either way depending on what government's into it, can't it?
Yeah.
It could
Yeah.
go either way.
Yeah, well, clearly it's here now. No government's going to
No.
rescind it.
No,
So that,
it'll just be modifications.
and you'll see other, as in the next few state government elections around the country, it would be very surprising if parties in opposition or governments themselves didn't say they were going to model their act on
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. It's a bit rushed, though, isn't it? Like it's sort of rushed at. It's
Yeah, well, I mean, that is kind of interesting that they
feel like
brought in offences about intimidating or harassing identified offenders when you didn't even get the information through Daniel's law.
yeah, but it is under the division, which is the division is Daniel's law.
Yeah,
I think the Morecambe's started introducing it as something we should do probably about roughly 10 years ago, I think I heard.
Yeah, so it's been going for a while. All right, let's move on to the next topic, which it's a hard topic to talk about because it is an emotive one. It's puberty blockers and the government's intervention. So what's happened is the Queensland government has restricted access to puberty blockers for minors in the public health system, pending a further review, and now there's been a legal challenge on that. Now, the legal challenge is that effectively it's impeding on a person's right to get medical advice and to have that medical advice. The way it stands now, it's not a law like Daniel's law. There's not a bill or an amendment. It's an administrative process that's been provided as a direction, specifically relating to public health. So private health, obviously, if you're well off enough to be able to go to private health, you can go and get puberty blockers. Now, puberty blockers,
Which I think I saw that roughly around that $700 to $800 mark a month.
yeah, is that how much it costs?
I think that's what I saw, but
Yeah.
something around there.
So to give an idea, puberty blockers are medications that pause puberty-related physical changes by suppressing a certain hormone, and they've been used in paediatric care for decades. Before and still currently, before they were used for transgender, they were used particularly around young adolescents who started puberty too early, or their puberty was the hormones released too quickly. So there were, examples of people in grade 6 who started getting facial hair, and they would use this blocker to slow down or to pause their puberty till it went into a stage where they were healthy enough to go through the puberty, because obviously there was some sort of problem. But also from a social perspective, it would be hard for a grade 6er to be going through that level of puberty.
and so will that be banned now?
Yeah, because it's well, not if you're in private health.
Yeah.
But the blockers have been blocked. So the actual use of them.
And I think similar medications were also used for breast and prostate cancer use as well.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's now being used for. And the argument, if you are an advocate for the use of these, and I can understand why people would advocate for it, and I can understand why people would have some reluctance or concern about it. But I guess the two things that I think are important to recognise, the first being, so there's three. The first being is that it's been used for a long time. And it's
Since the 70s, I saw.
Yeah, so it's not a new drug. So there's like they like I said, they want to do a further review to see how it impacts the health of the person. Well, it's been used for a very long time, and it's been used for a variety of things other than for transgender or gender dysphoria, depending on which way you look at it. But also, it's a pause.
They don't have the reason they don't have any large studies on it is because they haven't had that higher number of people having access to it over those years to be able to do a larger 1,000 person kind of study.
Yep. And from that perspective, it's also important to identify that this pauses the onset of or release of the hormone, it doesn't have a long-lasting effect, and as soon as you stop, you then
Yep.
continue. So
It's reversible. It's not a permanent. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And there's a small window of time that kids
yeah,
can go on these puberty blockers. Otherwise, there are things that they can't then go and undo that have already occurred.
yeah. So I've got a list here. What they do. They do not reverse, but they pause voice deepening, breast development, facial and body hair growth, and menstruation. They do not cause permanent physical changes on their own. They do not affect fertility, and they do not change a person's gender or identity. So they're the things.
I think fertility is one of the things they sent the review wants to look at, whether it does.
Yeah.
And that may be just because they just they don't have those numbers.
Well, they could have probably just asked the doctors that have been
Yeah.
dealing with this for a long time. So the I guess the argument for it is that it allows people to slow down their development before, without the pressure of going into an irreversible physical change. So
Yeah.
rather than, so let's say, for example, a physician is talking to, the local doctor is talking to somebody who's struggling with identity, and they say, well, we want this, I need an operation, I need this. Well, we don't have to worry about an operation. We'll pause your puberty while you're going through this, and then maybe at the end of it, you might find you have a different view on life or things.
Yeah.
And so it's probably a way of physically and psychologically
Definitely.
dealing with a real issue. Is that fair to say? George, it's a
Yeah.
hard thing to ask what your view is on this, but what
Yeah, this is not something I've been really following really closely until I knew we were going to be discussing it tonight. I mean, my general view is that these are conversations that should be happening between a doctor and their patient, not a matter of politics. But I mean, just looking at some of the stories before we came on, before it gets to the body of it, it has all the resources, like Kids Helpline, Suicide Prevention Line, which really tells you about where we're going with this. Is the suicide rate of young people in this sort of sphere is tragic. This is an issue that really should be between, talked about in the family and with their medical practitioners, and to see just this position put out, which just seems so political. I don't think it's good for health, and I don't think it's good for the young people that are impacted by it, and what it'll mean for suicide, for mental health, and all those families. You see, in that stuff I was reading, a lot of it is about the parents, and because ultimately, what is the effect of this is a medical intervention of sorts being denied, that both the medical practitioner and the family and the child are saying they want to happen, but it's being denied from an outside political influence. Yeah.
So, Carly, is this sound medical intervention from a government, or is this the reframing of the culture wars that we,
Reframing of the culture wars. And I don't really know that it's going to be a vote winner for them, maybe like for a very certain section of the community, of constituents, but I can't imagine it's most people's number one priority.
Yeah. And Dave, do you think, what's your thoughts on this? Should doctors be the ones to make decisions on clinical matters, or should it be political?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm puzzling about why they think there needs to be a political intervention. I mean, just to follow up briefly on George's comment, my son is a school teacher, and his previous school he had a role in terms of, I'm not sure what they call it in public schools, but they'd call it pastoral care in a religious school. And he was telling me that he was dealing with a person who had major gender issues, and that person said to him, I just wish my parents could accept me and love me for what I am. And so there was that real problem within his own family. So it's not just a theoretical sort of issue. It's a real issue for a relatively small number of people. I'm not quite sure what wrong the government's trying to fix by intervening in that relationship between doctor, the patient, and family. It's not as if it really impacts anybody else.
Yeah.
You know, I see stuff on Facebook very regularly from people who, post stuff really critical of people, in a transgender situation or whatever. And I think every now and then I've probably commented, what does it matter to you? Just be grateful you don't have to wrestle with that problem. Why, what does it matter to you, given that you're not likely to be swimming in the female Australian Olympic team? What does it matter to you to have to resolve those sorts of issues? Let the sports authorities sort that out. But going outside the sporting area, it's an issue for the individual and their family to sort of resolve.
Like gay marriage, how is that impacting anyone else's life?
Well, of course, you're too young, but in my day, as an early man, it was, when I was a young man, it was a question of not gay marriage, but just being gay. That was a criminal offence for years. I think, not that it impacted me personally, but my view always was, what does it matter to me if two other people of the same gender are, in love with each other? I suspect there's a big religious element, and when I was reading these notes today, I was reminded of Charlie Kirk, and he was, I gather, one of the crusades he had was against transgender, and I just think there's a religious element that people think, if you were to analyse it with, not everyone obviously, but with some, the answer would be, well, we don't think God would like that. But I just come back to the same answer, that if you are God-fearing and you don't want to do it, you don't have to.
Can I take you up on that too? Because I obviously I've grew up in a very strong Christian faith, and I have a belief, and I encounter people who are very anti-transgender homosexuality, who are Christian and non-Christian, who are have very different views spiritually, and what I've come to the conclusion is that sometimes people just have a view. They don't like something, and then they use their faith, or they use their position, or they use, whatever whatever foundation they've been brought up on to justify that.
Yeah, it's like people in America being rabidly anti-abortion, but not wanting to help children. Not worried about, child malnutrition or young children dying,
the poverty
but being
line,
very worried about abortion.
The education system, getting shot by guns.
Like if you draw that, the first lobby group ever to lobby the government about making it easier for women to have abortions in the United States was conservative Christian people, a group of them, and they were Catholics, they were Protestants, and they were Jewish, and they met and they talked about it, but then someone realised it could be a political issue that something could be won on, and that completely transformed. So going back to my thoughts is that as a person who has compassion, I don't want to see hurt people. I don't want to see someone who feels lesser than me because of the way they feel or the way they think. And what worries me about this is it's another way for people to say you're lesser than. And when you start saying that, you then start going into the mental health space where people think, well, maybe I am lesser than, and they end their own lives. And I don't want to see that. I want to see people, if people can be happy within their own skin and not,
accepted.
Yeah, and live natural, normal lives, then let them do that. As long as it doesn't breach the ethical bounds of what we are as a community, and we have age restrictions. I always say to people, I don't have an issue whether you're gay, you're bisexual, or you're heterosexual. Is nowhere near as important to me as whether you're age appropriate with your love, and that's to me the most important thing. Is that I want my kids at 12 to experience a relationship that they should at 12, not one that they should be experiencing when they're 21. So, that's what we should be talking about, and we shouldn't be interfering with medical and psychological support in a way like this. I don't think it's healthy, but I also am pragmatic enough to understand why this might concern people.
David Marr made a comment in a book of his I was reading some years ago, and it's always stuck with me. He said, Australians have a tendency to want to criminalise any conduct they don't agree with. And I think that's part of the same syndrome here.
Absolutely.
It does seem like some kind of import from this US culture wars thing as well. Like it seems like there's been a lot of these smaller issues just directly imported thanks to probably social media and
Yeah, absolutely. Is there I guess I open it up to everyone, is should there ever be a time when a politician or politics can override medical judgment?
I'd struggle to find one.
I mean, the classic case with abortion, I suppose, is the case where that's been a controversy for a long time.
Euthanasia.
And euthanasia. Now, I mean, in terms of abortion, the argument has always really, I think, centred around a human rights question about, at what stage does a fetus acquire or should acquire entitlement to human rights. Because once that fetus has a separate identity and has accorded human rights, the situation is very different. Now that circumstance doesn't apply to to puberty blockers. It doesn't apply to being a homosexual because that's consensual and so on. So really, my frame of reference is always to start thinking first of all about whether there's a human rights element.
Absolutely. Topic three, the big one. So I think when we agreed, or we were going to talk about this, and we're talking about I guess it's the response to the Bondi terror attack, which was an atrocious, terrible terrorist attack where people were murdered. Over 15 people were murdered in Bondi by two evil people, and the response and the debate around that moving forward, with many people calling for a royal commission. David, did you want to start us off, considering you have you have a very strong knowledge on this, but also some really good insights? Did you want to, or should we just frame it by saying that, in fact, Anthony Albanese, the Prime Minister, has now announced today that there will be a royal commission on this, and that there are 4 areas that they will focus on, which is tracking the key drivers of anti-Semitism, including religious and motivated extremism and radicalisation, making recommendations to enforcement, border immigration and security agencies to tackle anti-Semitism, examining the circumstances which led to the Bondi terrorist attack, making further recommendation to improve social cohesion and steps to counter the spread of ideological and religiously motivated extremism in Australia.
And I think there was already going to be a Royal Commission, but it'll be a New South Wales one.
Yeah.
This makes it a joint federal New South Wales one.
No, New South Wales are now withdrawing.
Yes, they are.
Really?
Yeah, that was announced, I think, just after this. As that is my understanding,
Yeah.
so they will join the federal one.
Yeah. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So it becomes a joint one.
Yeah.
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 Yes, that's happened within the last few hours.
Yeah.
I was going to say, that when we started talking about this podcast, one of the things we were going to talk about was whether there should be or shouldn't be a Royal Commission. Now, I suppose that doesn't quite mean we can all go home, since that's been answered.
Yeah.
But
I feel like there's plenty to talk about on the subject.
look, I think there's plenty to talk about it. Yes, and just looking at, Stuart's listed out the. I suppose the summary of the terms of reference. One of the things that it's occurred to me as being needed for a long time, long before there was even Bondi, is that, and maybe someone's done the work, but I think we need a really close analysis of the drivers for every identified anti-Semitic act. Now, that's going to be difficult if you adopt, the IRA definition, and any sort of anti-Israel comment becomes an anti-Semitic act. But let's just hone down on the stuff that has been criminal conduct for
So
ages.
can I ask you that question though? Is anti-Semitism anti-Jewish or anti-Israel?
Well, let's come back to that. But in terms of what I think is needed, and hopefully, the Royal Commission will seek this out. It needs a really close expert analysis of each offender, so that we get a better understanding of what's driving the people who are actually committing these offences. And there'll be, it's difficult to know how accurate the statistics are. They talk of, a few thousand anti-Semitic acts over the last year or two. I don't know how many have resulted in criminal charges, but I suspect it's, less than 50. But where you do have that information, let's unpack each of those offences and each of those offenders as a first step to see what. It's not going to give you all the answers, but it'll give you some valuable information, I think.
Maybe some patterns.
Some patterns, yes. Identify what's motivating people. Identify what is in their, their reasoning or whatever that's got them to the point where they go and throw paint on someone's car or try to petrol bomb a synagogue or whatever it may be. Yeah. But did you want to talk about that other question of?
Yeah, well, because this is one of the things that I note, and it's very much about anti-Semitism, the core issue. Why is
Bondi
it?
specifically.
Yeah. So, well, no. I know it, but it's not. So this isn't addressing the issues that led to a terrorist entering the country, accessing a weapon, and then scoping it out, going and murdering 15 people. This is very much a different Royal Commission, isn't it? This isn't looking at that issue. It's looking at it's looking at anti-Semitism from a federal point of view and how our response to that is.
Yeah.
Well, I guess point 3 is examine the circumstances which led to the Bondi terrorist attack. But I guess what I'm saying is that if you are an agitator towards Israel, and if you hate Jewish people, you're anti-Semitic. Which, okay, I get the second point. You might have issues with Israel, like you might have issues with the United States of America at the moment, based on some of the things that they've done with ICE or immigration. But if you're pro-Palestinian, or if you're anti the response from Israel to how they've managed Gaza or how they've dealt with Gaza, somehow you're also anti-Semitic.
It's conflated in, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess my question stands is, and you've asked for examples, but is being can I be pro-Jewish and pro-Palestinian?
Sure. I mean, if you read the stuff from the Jewish Council of Australia, that's precisely their position. That's a Jewish organisation. I've read up a bit about them and had a bit of very brief correspondence with them. But they're really established because they wanted a Jewish organisation that understood the need for justice for Palestinians and was prepared to work for it. There are some very prominent Australians in that organisation. So yes, you certainly can be. There's I think a very strong element of the organised Jewish community, Jewish pro-Israel lobby groups and so on, who don't think that's legitimate. They're very opposed to that, and the non-Zionist Jews complain about a lot of invective directed at them because they're not supporting Israel. But yes, there are plenty of Jews out there who are not at all happy with Israel or its conduct, and Netanyahu in particular.
So, George, what do you think that the a police investigation and a coroner's investigation and a coroner's inquest wouldn't achieve that a Royal Commission could achieve?
Yeah, and achieve
and
much
time,
quicker and more
yeah.
efficiently. I mean, Albanese's currently, obviously politically, if one way or the other, he was going to agree to this at one point. I mean, it stretched out for a long time, and politically, he's needed to. And I mean, I think Royal Commissioners are always good. I think we should get the politics out of it and get it in a Royal Commission and get to the facts. I mean,
But shouldn't a coronial inquest be done first so you could frame a
Is
Royal
it a bit
Commission?
soon? Like,
yeah, well, I mean, I don't know if will a coronial inquest really get into the motives of the.
A coronial inquest can compel people to answer questions. It can call witnesses. It can do it in a much faster. And we're talking about an open inquest where questions are asked and established. And then a coroner could effectively call for a commission of inquiry to be done and provide a better framework than potentially what those four limbs are right now, couldn't they?
I don't know if they'd have the resources or if they could call for it. At the moment, they've just appointed a former High Court justice. I think it's worthwhile doing. I think we'll get a good body of work from it. I think this massacre could have happened whether it was anti-Semitic or not. I mean, there's been a lot of pushback about what we should do about guns and whether there should be better checks, which seemed really remarkable, the pushback on that. I just don't think the whole thing hasn't showcased Australian, the ways in so many different ways. I just think that, we need to have a more dispassionate view of it, and a forensic view of it, and a Royal Commission. I think, given where it's going right now, in a public debate on Sky and everywhere, I think a Royal Commission would be good in terms of trying to get the politics out of it, which I know is impossible, but actually getting to the heart of the matter.
But the appointee is also
already getting pushback.
Yeah.
That's just pretty hard to understand, other than a couple of cases have been cited for allowing pro-Palestinian rallies or something. It's very hard to, I know immediately people, and even before you appointed her, people have been sort of critical of her as a choice.
I suspect that they really wanted somebody of their own, pro-Israel, a Jewish pro-Israel person or something like that. That's my suspicion. I see Frydenberg's got very cranky at the appointment of Bell, and if Frydenberg doesn't like it, then it seems like that's the first ground on which it's a good idea. I mean, Frydenberg's got he's on record
relaunch to do.
Yeah, he's got that, but he's on record going back 18 months or so for wanting to criminalise statements like from the river to the sea. He wants to criminalise advocacy for the disestablishment of Israel. He quoted, I don't know whether he wants to criminalise pro-Palestine rallies. I haven't seen anything from him that says that precisely, but he certainly cited on a Facebook post recently, he cited with approval, with delight, the fact that apparently some public opinion poll had come, a majority had said they think pro-Palestinian protests should be banned. Now, anybody who's serious about civil liberties and our political rights, freedom of speech and so on, should have said that's a bad idea. But he's saying, isn't it wonderful that a bare majority, I think it was, now want to ban. So he's really laid his markers out that, as far as he's concerned, anything that's too critical of Israel should be an offence.
What I found really remarkable about the whole debate is how we have a lot of the same politicians who have tried to center themselves, who've been to Bondi, who have been very loud on this, are the same ones who tried to weaken or abolish 18C of the Racial Discrimination Act. Section 18C of the Racial Discrimination Act is one of the main provisions we have against hate speech. At the same time as some of these politicians have been advocating and voting recently as 2017 in the Senate to water it down. And then in 2013, I think Abbott took it as an election promise. It was Holocaust deniers who were advocating for it, who were supporting that. It was Jewish groups who were saying, no, we need 18C. And it's just been remarkable that politicians who have been trying to water that down or abolish it are now talking about how the current government has
Haven't done
allowed
enough.
the current government has somehow allowed anti-Semitism to flourish.
And I mean, Pauline Hanson was processed under hate speech under 18C, wasn't she?
And Andrew Bolt.
Yeah.
Yes,
So,
that's right.
and-
And,
and-
that's where the opposition to 18C came from, those sorts of things. And then when Israel Folau got sacked by Australian Rugby Union, there was another outcry around the basis that he ought to be entitled to say that homosexuals will go to hell because he shouldn't be restricted. I mean, he wasn't in trouble, I don't think, under 18C. It was the rugby union's own internal rules. But that's the same sort of argument. The ground shifts depending on who your enemy is.
Yeah, and that's the irony or the hypocrisy of people arguing hate speech needs to be abolished, arguing only 2 years ago that the idea of there is free speech, not hate speech. I'm sure I've heard that I don't know how many times. So of course there is hate speech, and absolutely, but it shouldn't stop you from being critical of of actions against, whether it be, if you believe that what is happening in Gaza is terrible and it's an atrocity, you should be able to call that out. In the same way that when Jewish people were being marched and homosexuals and disabled people were being marched into gas chambers in Germany and murdered, that they should have been allowed to talk out and say that's wrong. Our government, our people, the German leadership were wrong and evil in what they did. That doesn't mean you hate Germans. It means you hate what they did. I hate what happened on the 7th of October and what, evil people proclaiming their God and proclaiming their values did to innocent people. But equally, I hate the response of Netanyahu in killing young children and,
The children
innocent.
in hospital.
Yeah.
So why can't I hate both?
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm anti-war, I'm anti-killing
Yeah.
people, particularly on the whim of powerful men in the name of religion. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
pro or anti any particular.
Yeah. So it's a hard topic to talk about, but it's important that we have a freedom not to communicate and effectively communicate how we feel about an issue without saying something that oppresses another human. Like, you don't need
It's
to do that.
interesting, isn't it? Because part of the line which the ECAJ, the Executive Council of Australian Jury, and those sorts of organisations have been running really is that, as I understand it, that these protests pro-Palestinian build up hatred against Israel, and that contributes to hatred against Jews and so on. And I think there's probably an element of truth in that. Probably a focus on that. The atrocities of Israel is probably contributing to. It shouldn't, but it is probably contributing to some extent to a rise in anti-Semitic feeling. But that's really, in a sense, the price you pay for freedom of speech. I'm sure all the criticism which the Jewish lobby has been doing lately, all the criticism that they've been doing about pro-Palestinian protesters is likewise contributing to a rise in Islamophobia in the broad mass of people out there who don't think things through carefully. They're saying it's dreadful that these people are protesting for Palestine, and people who don't think all that well out there are saying, yeah, and they're Muslims, so Muslims must be a real problem. And so that's, it goes both ways. But we wouldn't suggest that the pro-Israel lobby should be prohibited from raising their point of view. I mean, I don't agree with it, but they're as entitled to raise their point of view as the pro-Palestine demonstrators are entitled to raise theirs.
I make the observation that after the Bondi attack, that the two groups that felt most vulnerable and like their safety had been impacted was the Jewish people and the Muslim people. Because after the Bondi attack, if you were Muslim, you would be feeling as though you were at risk.
It's well documented, isn't
Yeah.
it? There have been quite a few reports of a major rise in Islamophobia.
So yeah, if you're Muslim, I don't think you wanted or you'd celebrate the attacks on human souls. It's just it's barbaric, and it's a distortion. It's an evil that whether you whether it be Catholicism or Protestantism or Muslim or Jewish, there's been examples or people of no faith have all had distorted views where individuals have gone and done something
Extremism,
heinous. So that's the the thing that I think is important to sort of really highlight. But if we talk about royal commissions, we have a commission into violence, abuse, neglect, and exploitation of people with disabilities. That took 4 years and 6 months. We had one into defence and veteran suicide, which took 3 years, 2 months. The Robotech scheme commission, a royal commission,
About that, yeah.
11 months, shortest one in the last few years. You had the Royal Commission into Aged Care Quality and Safety, which was 2 years, 5 months. You had the Royal Commission into Misconduct in Banking, Superannuation and Financial Services Industry, which took 1 year and 2 months. And then the Royal Commission into Institutional Responses to Child Sex Abuse, 4 years and 11 months.
It's not a quick thing. This is going to be a while, and this is perhaps more open-ended than any of those.
Yeah.
And I just Googled then, the Lint Cafe Siege didn't have a royal commission, but the coronial inquest into it was 18 months.
Yes, there was a coronial inquest, and obviously the Tasmanian
Port Arthur.
Port Arthur massacre didn't have a royal commission either.
Yeah.
Yet it was, incredibly instructive in changing legislation.
It's very consequential. I mean, John Howard probably came up very, very quickly with the gun with the gun proposals, and
It's interesting that that legislation to prohibit, say, shotguns that can fire within a certain time, 8 rounds. That was the benchmark.
probably saved a lot of lives at Bondi.
Yeah.
That you can't get those guns as easily here.
But the problem is, the gun companies have changed the technology so that they are still classed as Category B weapons, or as A. It's one of the weapons that you're allowed to have, but they've changed the action on it so it allows you to shoot 8 rounds in the same time as the very weapon that was that John Howard had caused to be banned. And what they've done is they've changed the trigger mechanism. They've added different things to it. So they've effectively worked out a workaround. So, of course, that needs to be reset. And you need to be able to go, well, those types of weapons, it was always the intention for that not to happen.
Yeah.
1 shot reload or 2 shots reload is different to 8 shots reload. There's no need for it. And I guess from that perspective, there does need to be some argument around that. Yep.
Definitely.
Well,
and the National Registry. Like that was first brought up around about the Hoddle Street murder kind of time, I believe, which is like in the late 80s. And then Howard brought it up again after Port Arthur and said, yep, we're going to do this. And it kind of got shelved a little bit because they obviously did a whole heap of other measures. And then it kind of came back on the radar again after, and I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, the Wyambella police shooting.
Yeah, here in Queensland.
Yeah, so it came back on the radar, but it hadn't yet been brought up. 'Cause
Yeah,
there are some
and more mental health checks in terms of.
Well-
I mean, that came up after Wyambella.
Yeah.
We're both pronouncing it wrong now. that you should have better mental health checks for gun ownership.
There's that, but right now there are some states who are still using pen and paper to keep their records.
Yeah.
And the states are definitely not all connected together, and there's not like a national registry would mean that is like a cradle to grave track of each individual gun that's in circulation, and any law enforcement place in Australia can look up and say, well, that person's got this many guns and they've got these licenses, whereas now it's kind of just huddled together.
If we could nationalise our traffic laws, I'm sure we could nationalise our gun laws. Queensland's one of the most advanced in their processes and their their investigation into licensing. The weapons licensing branch of the Queensland Police is probably one of the most fastidious. There's no question about that. So, they could potentially be the example that others need.
And what about periodic reviews of licenses and things like that?
I think they do that here, and they do inspections. But again, if you want to do that, you can. It's going to cost more money. Like, it's just going to cost more money because you need more people, you need more resource, and you can address some of those by addressing some of those weapons that, even if they got into the wrong hands, they're not going to create mass destruction.
Yeah.
But having said that, in the same way that, back many years ago, was the weapon of choice for terrorists was a pipe bomb or a pressure cooker.
Mm-hmm.
Boston
Cars.
Marathon, took out, the IRA used cars. Means that there's always, when there's evil, evil has a way of
a box cutter can do it. Yeah.
An aeroplane into a building.
Yeah.
That's
So-
a bit sophisticated. But
Yeah. On that wonderful note, I want to finish by asking a couple of trivia questions for you guys based on.
Can I, just before you do,
Yeah.
I just want to make a comment about the appointment of Virginia Bell as the commissioner, because there has been a bit of, as George mentioned, a bit of
Kerfuffle.
kickback, feedback,
Pushback
about her. I think it's a good idea to appoint somebody who doesn't have skin in the game.
Yeah,
Because
very
they can
neutral.
be independent, they can be neutral. I thought from the very outset, when Gillian Siegel was announced as the special envoy for combating anti-Semitism, that was a bad choice. And the more I got to know about her, the more I realised it was a bad choice, because she's an activist. She's an activist on one side, and that's going to do two things. It's going to distort your judgment, and I think her report shows how much a problem that is. But it's also, people aren't going to have faith in you. You're going to divide the community rather than unite the community. So I think Virginia Bell's probably a good appointment. Although I must admit, I've never read any of her judgments. But
I agree. I think it is a good appointment, and I just think that when you're in the opposition and you're looking for things to be angry about, if you are angry because there is no Royal Commission, then you're going to be angry if there is one.
Yeah, there's plenty of people who are always there's a
who you
commission after
selected.
commission. Yeah.
And then if you selected that person that they wanted, you'd be angry with the terms. If you are not angry with the terms, you'd be angry with where it's being held. It just, there is certainly some politics in this before. There should have been compassion before politics, in my view, but that's another.
it would have been nice to sit back for 2 weeks and for people just to concentrate on allowing the grieving process to go on, rather than point scoring within 24 hours.
And all the people traumatised that were on the beach that day.
Yeah.
There was no national healing, and that, to me, that's when I look back, it's so disappointing that didn't happen. I know there was some space, even at the memorial. There was people who were booing the Prime Minister. Of our country.
When he turned up,
It's just immoral.
And do you think, if you compared it, I mean, obviously it's going to be different at Port Arthur because it's a more remote location, but pre-social media, post-social media world where we might have given that week or whatever for a national mourning, whereas now it's just jump on 24-hour news cycle, everyone's on straight away?
Was it Kim Beazley who was the opposition leader at the time?
Yeah, he would have been, yeah.
And first thing he did, said, John Howard, what can I do to support you?
Yeah.
What can I do? Not Royal Commission this, Royal Commission that. No, we will stand together. And incredible leadership on his part to give John Howard the freedom to move forward with
what needed to happen.
with what needed to happen, and to not criticise that. That took incredible leadership from both parts, and you miss that now.
You rarely see that
Yeah.
now.
All right, so if we've got nothing else, I just want to ask a few questions, or I don't know
All
how
right.
this one's
I'm
going
a
to
bit
go.
nervous. Okay.
All right, so anyone can answer these questions.
Tweet.
There's 7 of them.
Okay.
Short, sharp way to finish the episode. What is the name of Australia's highest court?
The High Court. Oh, no. Yeah, the High Court.
The High
Of
Court
Australia.
of Australia. Yes, very good.
I'll leave that to the solicitors in the
Yep.
room.
All right.
I thought you were going to do a trivia question like in 1967, what was the name of the highest court?
No,
Would that have
no.
been like the House of
No,
Lords?
no. I
or-
start
Would have been the
easy.
Privy Council.
Privy Council.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1967.
Who appoints the Governor General of Australia?
The King Charles III.
Yes, well, the monarch.
Oh, right. Yes, I suppose you're right, technically. Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. Yep. Technically. Well, I mean, on advice of the Prime Minister.
Yes,
but yeah.
yes.
Yep. Which Prime Minister? I think George is going to get all these right.
Yeah, I'm just going to, I'll just do this one out.
Okay. Which Prime Minister introduced Medicare?
Whitlam. Oh, Hawke. Hawke, of course. Bob Hawke.
Any other?
Yeah, because Whitlam introduced Medibank.
And then it changed.
Which Fraser abolished, and then Hawke reinstated it under the name Medicare. So
Correct. It is Robert Hawke.
Robert Hawke.
Bob Hawke. Who is Australia's longest-serving Prime Minister?
Menzies.
Of course, because I said
Robert
Robert.
Menzies.
Yeah, I said Robert. I read the wrong answer. Yes. And how long has he served for
Well, the first time or the second time?
in total?
Because he's sort of like Churchill and came and went back. I'd say, I don't know, 18 years.
And
And 7 months.
5 months close.
yeah.
You're close.
it was 1949 to 1966, but he had that about 18 months or whatever it was.
Yeah, with
Yeah.
the UAP. Yeah, because he would have been with the United Australia Party, which is why Clive Palmer says he's with him.
Yeah.
And then he would have come back after forming the Liberal Party, probably.
Yeah. Well, here's one, and it's a two-parter. Bonus points.
You got to make the final question worth more points than all the previous ones.
Well, then I should have asked this one. Which Prime Minister secretly held multiple ministerial
Scott Morrison.
Scott
roles?
Morrison, yeah.
How many?
5.
Yes.
16. Oh no, it wasn't the whole cabinet, wasn't it? It was Keith Pitts.
If
He held
if-
Keith Pitts one,
if he
and a
could
few
have, he
others.
probably would
He
have.
had he had health and
Well, so 5. It was 5.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, now tell me what they are.
Oh.
You got the first one right?
well, one was health. One was so that he could approve the offshore drilling off of like Wollongong or something. One was really sketchy. Yeah.
One of them was
Yeah.
sketchy?
Minerals and
Yeah.
resources.
One of
was it?
Yeah, it was one that was really sketchy about offshore, like something really political and weird that he did like with no COVID.
So health,
Back.
finance,
Yeah.
industrial science, energy and resource.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was the weird one.
Home affairs and the treasury.
Yeah.
So he held them all. And who did the investigation?
You know, there's
in
somebody
relation-
who's had a lot more than that in the past, but he did. Like Whitlam and the deputy leader, they held everything.
Whitlam and Barnard.
Yeah, they held everything between the two of them.
Tony
Let's do
Burke's
it.
got a few at the moment, doesn't he?
Yeah,
The duumvirate or something like that. Yeah.
but they had to be appointed, don't they?
Yeah,
Not
and they made it open. I mean, Scott
yes,
Morrison
that's
was
right.
appointed, but he kept it secret. But but because it was after Whitlam got elected and before the caucus had selected the ministry, him and the deputy had all
Yeah.
the positions.
So just this isn't in there, but who was the person that Albanese got to investigate and to provide a report on Scott
This
Morrison?
the new commissioner of
Bell. That's
Bell,
right,
yeah.
yes. No wonder they Conservatives don't like him. Yeah.
And who was the Prime Minister who lost his trousers?
I'm asking the question.
Fraser,
Oh, sorry.
Malcolm Fraser in like Memphis, Tennessee or something.
Tennessee, yes.
Yeah.
Was it at a hotel hallway or
Yeah,
something?
it was like
Yeah.
a Marriott or Hilton or
So
something.
here's a. I'm not saying it's a trick question, but it might be.
Oh, gosh.
What is the constitutional age requirement to be eligible to sit in the Australian Parliament?
18, if there is one. I don't think it's in the Constitution.
I think it's as long as you're eligible to vote. But
You're both incorrect.
What?
well, there you go.
It's 21 years, but
You have to be older to be a Prime
I mean,
Minister, though, don't you?
I mean, it doesn't. Wyatt Roy would have been 18.
correct. So, here's the nuance. Section 34 of the Constitution states that a person must be full age of 21 years old. But the preceding part of that piece of legislation says until the Parliament otherwise provides, the qualification of a member of the House of Representatives shall be as follows. He must be of full age of 21 years, which means it's still in the Constitution, but
Yeah.
then the Commonwealth Electoral Act of 1918, I think it was in the 70s, changed it to 18 under Section 163, which says that a person who has reached the age of 18 may be nominated.
So, I mean, would that be called like dead letter or something? There might be like a proportion of the Constitution that's still in there that doesn't apply
Well,
somehow.
If the Constitution refers to it as an unless otherwise
Yeah.
advised, so until Parliament makes another,
It's a bit like a transitional provision, isn't it?
yeah, but like, wouldn't it be a transition if they never changed it, if it stayed that way forever?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but they're saying it's 21, but we accept that you can make a change to this because you might have a different view
There
later
are
on.
quite a number of provisions like with that same formula in the Constitution.
And I mean, 21 would have been the voting age till the 60s.
Probably
Or
till the 70s.
70s,
But certainly it was the voting age
Vietnam.
when I started voting. I had to wait till I was 21.
Oh, wow.
But then I'm, of advanced years, as they say.
Yeah, you would have helped write the Commonwealth Electoral Act of 1918.
No, not that didn't. I did have a wonderful part-time job as a research assistant for a textbook, an annotated Commonwealth Constitution. Two of the academics at UQ, Kevin Ryan and Darryl Lum, wrote this book, which was an annotated Constitution, for those who don't know, just goes through the Constitution clause, section by section, and then discusses it and sets out all the cases and so on. And I had a job as a research assistant on that, which was terrific. The two tasks I had primarily, I must admit, weren't researching the law so much as proofreading it and indexing it. But by the time I'd finished doing those two jobs, I'd read it about 4 times. So, I knew a bit about it. But that was some time ago.
We were talking about homosexuality being an offence in Queensland. One of my first tasks was to omit that out of the about 28 criminal codes of Queensland. Getting you remember how you used to have to, they'd print out the thing and you'd have to cut out the section and make sure you got it right over.
Yeah, they send you all the pages to put in the binder.
Then someone would come and inspect every copy to make sure that you did it exactly right and it looked like it was, perfectly done. Yeah.
Eventually your book would sort of expand like this. You could hardly close it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I remember having to put just white marks over where the sentence was by hanging. hanging. It's still
What
in.
kind of white marks?
Like it's just a piece. You'd have a piece of white paper. You'd have to cut it out.
Oh,
So
okay.
if it was omitted altogether,
Yeah.
usually it would be reworded, and it'd just be these words, and you'd have to cut out those words, and it'd be the exact same font
Yeah.
and then you'd have to stick it over the top of the old.
Yeah.
And sometimes it'd be a full paragraph because you couldn't do it any other way, but they would do it in such a way that it would fit exactly into that piece of legislation, exactly how it's intended. And other times it would just be a white piece of paper, particularly when it was like an offence where it just been obliterated, like the offence of capital punishment.
And then, of course, society got modern. Modern science invented the loose leaf binder, and you did it that way by taking a whole page out and putting a new page in.
Although loose leaf binders, you can lose the pages more easily in.
Oh, you can, yes.
But you wouldn't, because you're responsible. Which Governor-General dismissed Gough Whitlam in 1975?
Kerr, John Kerr. Kerr.
Sir John Kerr, yep. And that is
There's a really good exhibition at the old Parliament House right now, which has both of their desks, Whitlam's and Kerr's desk, and all the correspondence and stuff.
That's pretty cool.
Well, we've reached the end of our the natural end of our podcast today, guys. Thank you for coming. George, you got anything planned for the week?
Yeah, my brother's coming up for the weekend. Yeah,
That's your younger brother. isn't
Yeah,
it? Yep. Yeah. He came and helped with your election.
he
once,
did. Yeah, he's a very
He
important
did.
part of my campaign.
Yep. Fantastic.
I may or may not go to a great gig down at Blazing Saddles on Saturday night. My beloved son is coming up to have another anniversary reunion gig with his grade 12 band.
Wow.
They're all in their 40s now, of course. I think this is the 28th anniversary, but they've been doing it more or less annually since 25. So if you want some really, head-banging music, that's the place to be on Saturday night.
Well, I might have to go. Sounds like my kind of place.
Yeah.
Awesome. I missed the first 27, but sure. Carly?
They're the same songs.
Nothing exciting for me.
Nothing.
Chores, landscaping. That's about it.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, that's the end of our podcast, and we'll catch you next week for those who are coming.
Thank you.